Hello, welcome to DIGIVET VET Upskilling for Trainers and Women Beneficiaries. This is a social economy workshop looking at social enterprises, social entrepreneurs. It's co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program. The project is called DIGIVET, and we're focusing on digital upskilling for VET trainers, vocational education trainers. The social economy workshop, its place here is for those looking to upskill their entrepreneurial skill sets so they can create a social enterprise, a new project, or any form of new development. So social innovation is the key. We're looking at the economies. Well, they have three main sectors: the business private sector, the public sector, and the social economy. And this embraces a wide range of community and voluntary organisations and not-for-profit activities, also known as the third sector. Sometimes there's also reference to a fourth sector. It is informal. This is where informal exchanges take place between family and friends. So you can a family business, for example. What are the 6 key stages in social innovation? Okay, how are we going to create a new project, a new social enterprise? What are the 6 key stages? They're prompts, proposals, prototypes, sustaining, scaling and diffusion, and finally systemic change. They're not always sequential. Think of them as overlapping with distinct cultures and skills. They're more of a framework that you can build a project around. If you follow all of the stages, complete all of them, then you will come up with a framework of how you're going to create and implement and sustain a project. More importantly, communication and networking are key skills you're going to need in any sort of project development. Any community development will need networking and communication. So prompts. Networking is really important if you're going to diagnose the challenge, frame the question to tackle the root cause, and go beyond the symptoms, which is normally the first response. So you might find or come across symptoms, and the first thing you do is see how you're going to support it. But the main thing is to frame the question to tackle the root cause. Find out what it is underpinning everything. An example of this with the past project that was created around deliberate self-harm. This was alexithymia. When I researched deliberate self-harm, suicide, depression, I have had 28 years experience in mental health projects. I discovered that the underpinning cause was more often not alexithymia, particularly with young people where they don't have the ability to express their feelings or be able to communicate. It's really not being able to express themselves. So we created a project called DSH, Deliberate Self-Harm Positive Choices, and that was tackling alexithymia in young people. When it was completed, the European Commission labelled that one as one of their success stories in Europe. So it's really important to have a look beyond the symptoms, tackle the real reasons, overcome any false barriers you might come across with people saying, or giving you reasons why you cannot do it. Mapping and gap identification. Have a look and see what is out there. Are other people, other communities actually providing a service? But is it the same target group? So have a look and see if there's a target group that's missing. That is part of your gap identification. There are many challenges that prompt innovation, that demand action on an issue or that mobilize belief that a course of action is possible. Communities researching themselves to identify their own needs and solutions based on the premise that people are best placed to identify their own needs. So if you work in a community setting, you talk to people within the community, work with other communities to see if they have the same challenge, same issues, and then have a look and see what you can do to find a solution. So prompts can come from anywhere that people say, oh, why can't we do this? Or why can't we do that? Ask people what they really want. And then you'll find people coming up with all sorts of ideas that you'll be able to tackle and discuss with other people, particularly if you get stakeholders involved and other people working on the same issue. Again, we're looking at mapping what's out there, gap identification. These are all tools you'll use when you're tackling prompts. So now you've discovered the issue, you've had a look, you see what's underpinning it, what are the real causes. Now's the time to come up with a proposal and solution. These can include user-led design, redesigning services, and engagement of ex-users and those with lived experience. People who have been through the challenge or faced the challenge themselves, they know what the barriers are, they know what they need to do to be able to overcome the challenges that they face. So this is what we mean by user-led design. Get people, service users, those with lived experience involved to look at what is on offer. Exchange visits. For example, if you're working in one community, there's nothing to stop you going and visit other communities, other centres, community centres, youth centres, because they're a powerful tool for promoting ideas. They give confidence for calls to action, because if you have other people willing to tackle the same issue, they want to join you in partnership, it gives you a bit more confidence and you're bringing more skills on board. Again, it's all down to networking communication. But it's common when you're setting up these meetings for transfer of knowledge and ideas. See, network is something the social economy sector does well, or it needs to, if it's going to survive in the 21st century. This sector, we cannot live on our own. We cannot be independent. It really is important to create strategic partnerships if you're going to create other projects and share ideas. So networking is really key. So now you've got your proposal, you've got your solution planned. Next step is to create a pilot. What you need to do is have a feasibility study, delivery model, challenges, where you're going to get the money, and what other resources are available. So these are the topics you need to cover if you're going to set up a pilot. Very important to do a feasibility study to make sure it's time bound. You can do it with the resources you have available. And also, is it going to sound business plan? Is the delivery model easy to implement? Can you get it up and running quickly? So what are the challenges? So you do risk assessment. Make sure you go all through and getting a finance with a business plan in place, so you know what you're going to be doing and when you're going to need the money, what your cash flow is going to be like. All of this is part of your feasibility study. The driving forces, you say, a speed, getting up and running, and also it's going to be time bound. How long are you going to run the pilot for? Keeping the costs low. Again, that will depend on how long the pilot will be running for and what resources you have immediately available without having to buy them in. Tangibility. What does success look like? How is it going to be? What is your end goal? Evaluation. You do this continuously right from the start. Every meeting you have along this way, do an evaluation questionnaire. So you ask what other people feel about the meeting you just had, and get the feedback from the service users you've involved in setting up the project. Funding, important to know where you're going to get the money from. If you get commissioners on board, local commissioners and decision makers on board early on, then there's a good chance that they may have some funding available to set up a small pilot. They have what they call seed funding available in many instances, depending on what it is you want to do and if it fits in with your local priorities. So again, when you're researching, have a look at the local priorities and see what other grants may be available with direct commissioning and tendering, or you apply for European funding, EU funding, or whatever national funding is available. So sustaining. We got past the pilot projects. Now we want to make it mainstream. How are we going to sustain it? Have a clear idea how the project will generate income to cover the costs. Will a public body pay for what is on offer? Or will you get money from the public donations? Mainstreaming. Getting your commissioners on board early on. We said that in step 3. If your commissioners are on board with a pilot and they're following it, you report to them regularly, then they're more likely to find funds available to mainstream it once you've evaluated the impact of the pilot project. So evaluation, dissemination, really good skills to have in stage 3, because that will lead on to the sustaining stage 4. So you can make the project continue. You can get the social enterprise to continue long after the initial seed funding has come to an end. The 5th stage is scaling and diffusion. Nearly every challenge has been overcome by someone somewhere. The challenge in the 21st century is to find out what works and scale it up. This was a quotation from Bill Clinton. Scaling is an easy concept to grasp. So we want to do what we do, but we want to do it elsewhere. So we want to spread it to other communities, we want to spread it to other regions. We actually want to increase the service that we want to deliver. We may want to recruit more people to give us bigger capacity. This is all about scaling. So have something in mind about how you're going to upscale your project once you've got it up and running and past the pilot project stage. So what about diffusion? Well, diffusion is about sharing the innovation. The social economy, primarily oriented around social missions, it favours rapid diffusion, which is sharing the innovation. Does not try to keep it private. If you're working in a private limited company, quite often they'll be retaining all the intellectual property rights. They will want to keep all their patents, etc., very private. They do not share. Diffusion is all about interaction and modification. So you've had this project, it's been successful. Now you want to help other people, help other communities, help other regions to do the same thing. They can actually take what you've done and modify it. We've done this several times with training programs where we've had it accredited in several different countries. And what we've done is kept the learning outcomes the same, but actually changed the method of delivery and the resources used. So that is modification. That's all part of diffusion. Finally, we come to systemic change. These are innovations that radically change fundamental systems on which we depend, particularly in healthcare, housing, learning, and training. It involves changes in mindsets. Okay, it's different from innovation in products and services. This is a change the way that people think. It's a multi-sector approach. So you need to have your stakeholders on board at the early stage. We said this in the proposal stage. all the way through. Keep your stakeholders involved, informed, so that when you come to the end of the project for sustainability, you'll have some systemic change taking place where other partners will actually take it on board and use whatever it is in their daily practice. So innovation is seeing what everyone else has seen, but thinking about it differently. Our friend Richard Branson, he had a look at what other people were doing. He thought about it differently and he set up his new companies, because he had a belief that if you see somebody doing something, figure out how you can do it better. And that's what he did, and he's made a very good success out of it. What you need to do is visualize the goal, focus on the goal, and the detail will follow. The 6 stages that we've been through actually help to visualize the goal, because we're looking at from the prompts, the challenges, the proposals. These all focus on what it is we want to be doing. So the 6 stages, again, a summary. Prompts, these are identifying the need. Proposals are about finding the answers. Prototypes, this is creating a pilot projects. Sustaining is having the complete business plan. What you're going to do after you've finished the project, pilot project, the seed funding is finished. How are you going to continue? How are you going to sustain the enterprise or the project once the initial funding is finished? Scaling and diffusion, interaction modification. This is sharing with other people. Having conferences, having events where you can actually demonstrate what you're doing and share the experience, and also to share with others the solutions you found, so they can actually take it on board as well, and you can actually be consultants to them while they develop it themselves. Systemic change, again, this is about changing mindsets, all about new trending ideas. I've given you one example of changing a mindset. We have another with development of a training program called Community Champion Training. What we did, we took an idea on board for people who wanted to have a doing house. They didn't know how to do it. So what we did, we created a community development training program so they could learn how to create a community project themselves, rather than just set something up in a building for them and inviting them to come along. So they were very much involved at the outset in developing the training. And then all the partners that were involved took the training on board. It was accredited. And then other organizations are using that training program we created for their own purposes in their own localities. So systemic change, new training ideas, and getting other people to use them. That's a prime example. Thank you for listening. What I will say again is on the registration page, there's links to some resources you can use to support this workshop. In particular, what I tend to do is break people into groups, and they go through the stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for 3 different scenarios. So I've given examples of 3 scenarios and also a blank sheet for people to work on. Usually it takes about 20 minutes to 40 minutes for them to complete one scenario. So you spread the scenarios around, and they'll come back together and then describe everything to the rest of the group. So it's a group exercise. Resources are there on the registration page. If you have any questions at all, my email is director@makeadreampl.com. Please email me any questions at all. Again, thank you for listening.